One of the tragedies of this genocide is that I think it could have been prevented much earlier. I think that if the Saudis had said that normalization talks are ended, genocide is a red line. If UAE had kicked out the Israeli ambassador and reversed normalization. If Morocco had reversed normalization the way it did in 2000 and 2001 after the second intifada. I think that if Sudan had reversed normalization, even though it's not really like a big country at this moment in time, but it is embroiled in civil war, I think the Americans, they value normalization so much they would have told Netanyahu, you're about to ruin all of this project, you need to stop it now. I think if Turkey had taken a stronger stance as well, kicking out the Israeli ambassador immediately. I think that the Americans can't sanction the whole region. Maybe if one of them had done it on their own, they might have paid a heavy price. But they can't sanction the whole region. I think that it was a conscious choice not to do anything. It wasn't the fact they didn't have power. They chose not to use that power because they believed Israel is a key part. We're talking about the idea of rational, irrational actors, and that's why I'm pushing back on the idea that there is any rationality in the stance taken by the regional actors. They could have stopped the genocide, but they chose not to. And it's important to remember that when Saudi Crown Prince had problem with Biden, he had no problem ramping up the gas prices. He had no problem giving Biden the cold shoulder. No problem bringing Xi Jinping and giving him red carpet treatment in Riyadh. He had no problem kicking out the Canadian ambassador for criticizing human rights record. The UAE had no problem mobilizing militias and arming Hemeti in Sudan and arming Haftar in Libya in a way that it refuses to arm Palestinians against the Israelis. There were many options that these nations could have taken and they chose not to, and many of them diplomatic. They didn't need to go to war. I'm not saying go to war. I'm saying they could have put pressure on the Americans enough to make them rein in the genocide. They chose not to, and not only that, they reassured the Americans that genocide is not a red line. I don't think that's rational. I think that's irrational, because I think now that you have a genocide that has been set as a precedent where you don't do anything, I think there will be lasting consequences for it in the American domestic sphere, but also in the relationship between the Arab people and their governments. The second point that is worth noting is that when we're talking about rational, irrational actors, is Israel the irrational actor? We'll get to that. But it's also worth noting that I know there is a tendency over the past couple of days to paint Iran as a rational actor. Iran was a rational actor insofar as it understood that Netanyahu wants a regional war and it refused to take the bait. But it's also worth noting that while many people celebrated, let's put it bluntly, celebrated at least some reaction to Israel's committing of a genocide through the firing of the missiles, Iran's firing of the missiles, it's important to remember that Iran's entire foreign policy in the region is built on militias that operate outside of the central government to paralyze that central government on a sectarian basis. And Oversights, and that they are guilty themselves of massacring thousands and displacing thousands of people in the region themselves. And that's why there is an Arabic saying that Allah yadhrub al-taghi bil-taghi, Allah hits a tyrant with a tyrant. And that's how many people in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen view the Iran-Israel, in that it's not rational versus irrational. You have an actor that is launching militias and supporting them, that have displaced Syrians, done demographic changes in Syria, that have these militias that massacred people in Iraq, that supported the Houthis, who toppled the internationally recognized government on the basis that they believe that the Houthis have a divine right to rule because they happen to be the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Iran is supporting these militias on that base. I don't call that rational, I call that irrational. All Iran said was, I won't react this way over a genocide, I'll react this way if you hurt me directly. And I think that is the greatest tragedy of this order. And even